All right, let's begin. Good evening. My name is Ross Anderson, and I work at Metrolinx as a senior advisor for community engagement on the Ontario Line subway project. I would like to warmly welcome everybody to tonight's meeting, where we will provide an overview of construction activities in the Corktown neighborhood. This is the site at King Street East in Parliament where the future Ontario Line subway stop will exist. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge we are on the lands that have been and continue to be home to many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, as immigrants, or involuntarily as part of the transatlantic slave trade in this generation or in generations past. We acknowledge the historic and continued impacts of colonization, and we need to work toward meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on territories and lands covered by many treaties that affirm and value the rights of Indigenous communities, nations, and peoples. We understand the importance of working towards reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. At Metrolinx, we will conduct business in a manner that is built on a foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. Next slide, please. At Metrolinx, we like to give a safety moment ahead of our meetings, and today's safety moment is about transit safety. So if you're using transit, whether it's subway transit, streetcar transit, or GO Rail or Via Transit, just mind the gap and watch your step. Hold on and try to stay alert. Respect other people's space and know your route. Next slide, please. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's meeting, and my goal is to keep the event on time and to have your questions answered to the best of our ability. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be made on the Metrolinx YouTube page. There is a closed caption feature available to those, which can be enabled on your device. This evening, I will be joined by my colleagues at Metrolinx and the construction team that is building the subway. As you can see on the screen here, I'm Ross. I'm joined by my colleague James Francis, who is in the Subways program as a sponsor. A sponsor is somebody who is designated to deliver the project as outlined. David O, who works for OTG, he's a project manager. You'll hear from him this evening. Hi, David. Chloe Fayette, she has also joined us tonight. And then Francisco Metcalf and Aga Stopka. So welcome and thank you for joining tonight's meeting. I'd also like to warmly welcome any elected officials present to tonight's meeting and the residents who call this neighborhood home. We're glad to have you. Next slide, please. In advance of tonight's meeting, several questions have been received using the Slido feature on the Metrolinx Corktown events page. Next slide, please. If you submitted a question and you don't see that question, it's because someone else already submitted a similar question. This feature will remain open during the event. Additionally, the chat function will be enabled at the Q&A portion of the event when the presentation is finished. You will also be able to use the raise hand function and verbally ask a question and speak to the constructors who are joined us on this call this evening. You will have to unmute your microphone. So by doing so, I will enable your microphone and then you unmute yourself. And then you'll be able to ask your question. The constructor will be able to provide you with an answer. Alternatively, if you don't want to ask your question using the microphone, you can always do so in the chat. Amanda, can we go back to the agenda because I did skip over it and I want to take a moment to read what we'll be speaking about tonight. So, of course, we'll begin with the Ontario Line overview and talk a bit about what progress has been made to date. We do have a construction look ahead to share with folks tonight. And then, the meat and potatoes of this meeting is about piling construction. And this symbols, the first major construction that we really have on the Ontario Line. And then we're going to talk a lot about reducing impacts to your community. And of course, we have allocated plenty of time for question and answer period. Amanda, can you take us to the About the Ontario Line slide, please? All right, well, you've probably heard of it. The Ontario Line is a new rapid transit project being built in the city of Toronto. It's designed to bring relief to the existing transit network and offer connections to neighborhoods, making it more accessible to everyone. The way the project is planned to encourage connections and to increase reliability, and we strongly believe that this will create more opportunities for more people to get to the places they need to be while reducing congestion on the current transit systems. So as you can see on the screen here on the left-hand portion, there's a map, and it's divided into two segments. You see one and two. Today, we'll be speaking about segment one. This is otherwise known as the south segment or the downtown segment. In pink, this is where the subway project will begin above ground, and then it will go underground at King Bathurst and continue eastward to Corktown, and then it will continue up through the north. There are different interconnections and interchanges at the Ontario Line Transit project. Excuse me as I have my notes here, but I want to focus on two right now. There are two very important interchanges. We'll see at Osgoode where it connects with the existing TTC Line 1 as it will go underneath the existing line without disrupting current subway operations. And again at Queen where you can catch Line 1 once again and go to Union Station, for example. It will also connect with Exhibition as we see here, where you can connect with Lakeshore West GO rail line, and then again at Pape and connect with the current existing line 2 for TTC. Again, as well, there'll be East Harbor connection to take you on the Lakeshore East line. Here are some stats on the right of the screen. So at peak rush hour, you'll see this train come as every 90 seconds during rush hour. And excuse me if I use train or subway or transit project interchangeably, because it is a bit of all three. And ultimately, this will reduce the number of cars on the road. I do see your hand is up, Candice, but I'm going to continue with the presentation and we'll come right back to you, okay? Next slide, please. So the Ontario line is being delivered by several different contracts, and today we'll introduce you to the Ontario Transit Group. The Ontario Transit Group is delivering the south segment of the Ontario Line project. That is the tunnels and the stations. So as you can see here in the yellow highlighted portion, that will be what the Ontario Transit Group, otherwise known as OTG, will deliver. Two of those stations are very important interchange stations, which I just mentioned. And finally, they'll be building the tunnel as well. With that said, I'll hand it over to my colleagues at OTG and we'll go to the next slide. And David, perhaps I'll let you take the lead on this.
Town Station 2024 construction look ahead schedule. So below on this list here are the major activities that will happen this year. So archaeological investigations. Archaeological work is complete on the north site. The south site is expected to be complete mid-spring 2024. The site hoarding installation is ongoing. The purpose is to define the long-term construction zone during the tunnel and station works. It will assist with public safety, noise mitigation, and site protection. Piling operations are expected to start this spring and last throughout the summer. Once complete, excavation activities inside the shaft will start, and excavations are expected to reach a depth of approximately 30 meters below street level to reach the bottom of the station and tunnel. Next slide, please. This is a photo of our north site. Along the perimeter, you can see plywood, concrete blocks, and scaffolding. This serves as our hoarding system and separates the public from our construction work zone. It also acts as a noise and vibration barrier. Inside the site, you can see an excavator working. So what we're doing here is removing loose, disturbed material from the archaeological investigations, stockpiling it, and hauling it off site. After we are replacing it with compacted granular fill, this will be the strong, stable foundation for the drill rigs to work on. So once the can you go back? So once the hoarding and site grading and preparation works are complete, we will then mobilize our drilling equipment to start the piling operation. Next slide. Focus on pile drilling. How does piling work? Piling is a foundational technique used to construct underground structural support systems. Pile walls will be installed around the perimeter of the future station's footprint. It will ensure stability and support for the surrounding infrastructure and buildings during the construction of the station. A pile wall consists of overlapping piles to form an underground, watertight retaining wall. This retaining wall will go across the whole entire footprint of the station, and this allows us to excavate from street level all the way down to the bottom of the station safely while not disturbing surrounding infrastructure and buildings. Next slide. How does piling work? The first step is to install the guide wall around the perimeter of the shaft. So in the photo below, this is an example of a guide wall. The styrofoam is in the shape of the pile that needs to be drilled, and it's encased with concrete on either side. So the drill will drill through the styrofoam, and this guide wall will ensure proper location and positioning of the pile. So to install the piles, the drill rig will auger holes 12 to 15 meters in depth to reach the bedrock. Once the holes are drilled, the hole is filled with concrete, and there are two main types of piles that we use. So the first type of pile is the primary pile in the photo below. That is just the hole filled with solid concrete. And then we have the secondary pile, which is reinforced. So these piles will be drilled in an alternating pattern between primary and filler. Sorry, primary and secondary. Next slide. So after all the piles are drilled throughout the site, we end up with a wall that looks like this. This is called a secant pile wall. So this temporary support wall allows us to safely excavate to the bottom of our station and tunnel, and allows us to build our concrete permanent structure from the ground back up. Next slide. So this diagram illustrates our drilling site, setup, and layout. So the piling operations will start on the north shaft first. Once complete, the drill rigs will be moved to the south, and then piling will start on the south. So the piling drilling schedule in Corktown. Piling works will be phased, beginning with the guide wall installation as early as April 29th. Hours of work are weekdays from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday work or extended hours may be required if necessary. The work is estimated to take place from late April 2024 throughout the summer into August in the north site. And for the south site, expected to start July and last throughout to mid-September. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Chloe. She'll be talking about the impacts of the drilling and how we minimize all the impacts to the public and surrounding neighborhoods.
Thank you. So during the execution of the piling activities, the community is to expect some noise from the equipment drilling the piles, loading excavated material, delivering material such as steel beams, and delivering concrete. So to be a little bit more precise, the equipment that will be used during this operation includes drilling rigs, cranes, excavators, concrete pumps, and also concrete trucks. So we are expecting approximately 30 trucks, more or less, entering and leaving the work sites on a daily basis, and those trucks will have to follow specified routes. Also, we will have certified flag person in place to ensure the safety for the community and the workers on site. Finally, the piling equipment will remain within the work site for the duration of the piling process. So to the right, you can see an example of a drill rig being delivered on site on a truck. Next slide, please. So now moving on to how we will reduce the impact to the community. So first of all, the trucking haul routes. So as I mentioned just before, the trucks have to follow specified routes. So coming from the east, the trucks will be coming from the Don Valley Parkway to Richmond Street, and then they will enter from Parliament Street and turn right into the site. The trucks will have a flag person to assist them to come on into the site. Then for the trucks coming from the west, they will be coming from the Gardiner Expressway. Then they will go on Sherbourne Street and then turn on King Street and then turn again on Parliament Street to go inside the site with a right turn. Again, a flag person will be here to assist. The OTG delivery trucks are contractually instructed not to arrive on site before 7 a.m. to avoid any noise. So this was for the north part of the construction site. Regarding the south side, the routes are still being determined in collaboration with the City of Toronto. So this will be announced at a later date. Now, regarding the pedestrian and traffic impacts. So all the sidewalk will remain open. The pedestrians will be able to continue to use Parliament Street. There will be flag persons to assist with the passage when the trucks are approaching the entrance and the exit points. Also, there are overhead protections that have been installed along the sidewalk that will ensure the safety of the public. And then finally, all the roads will remain open. So there will be no impact to the 504 King Street car, neither to the 65 Parliament bus or the 172 Cherry bus routes. So no impact on the transit stops or the schedule at the intersection of King Street East and Parliament Street. Next slide, please. So to reduce the impacts to the residents and businesses in the area, mitigation will be in place. The daytime work hours for the current phase of work are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have been installing 5-meter high noise wall along King Street East, Berkeley Street, and Front Street to help reduce the noise. We will use auger cleaner, which is a piece of equipment that we add to the drill rig in order to reduce the noise level when cleaning the rig. Also, by using continuous loop truck routes, we will be reducing the need for the truck to reverse and consequently to use their backup alarms, so less noise. The air quality will be monitored to track dust debris and vehicle emissions to ensure that the construction activities don't impact the quality of the environment. We have also dust control measures and street sweepers and wheel cleaning as needed to ensure soil and sediments is kept off the city streets and the sidewalks. So on the right on your screen, you can see an example of the 5-meter high noise wall that has been installed on King Street, and then below a picture of the auger cleaner, which is the yellow item on the picture. Next slide, please. So moving on to noise and vibration. So noise and vibration live monitoring devices are being placed on site and in the neighborhood for active traffic of impact to tracking of impact to ambient noise levels. Utilizing sound meters and real-time monitoring system, OTG can track and control noise emissions to help minimize disturbances to the community and ensure project regulations compliance. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see examples of vibration monitors and noise monitors. Finally, as mentioned before, we have hoarding that are acting as noise barrier. And they are an effective solution to absorb and contain some of the construction noise. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, I know that was a lot of information at once, and I'm sure many of you have questions, and this will be the time to ask those questions. So, if you'd like to raise your hand, please do so, and I will call on folks who have their hands raised in order. I will go between those who have their hands raised here in the chat, and then I will go to the questions in Slido for those of you who have submitted questions ahead of the event tonight. I'm going to ask my colleagues as well to enable the chat function if you do have a question and you'd like to insert it in the chat, but I'd like to kindly remind folks to please be respectful in the chat. Candace, I see your hand is up, and let's start with you. I'm going to enable your microphone right now. So, Candace, your microphone is enabled. Candace, do you have a question? Candace, please unmute your microphone by hovering over the microphone option on your computer, and it should say unmute. If you're still having trouble with it, we'll come back to you in just a moment. In the meantime, I'll go to Marion. Marion, I have allowed your microphone. Can you please ask your question? You have to unmute your microphone.
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm in the area there. I have a business, and so I'm there. I will be there during business hours. So can you describe a little bit about the noise of the auger? And it almost sounded like that the cleaner was going to be louder than the auger noise. I wasn't quite sure of that. If you could
Mhm.
talk a little bit about the noise of the auger and also the duration of it during the day. Is it like every minute of the day? Is it periodically? Like how, what am I to expect from the noise coming from the auger? Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Marion. And may I ask, whereabouts is your business, just for some context?
I'm actually right across the street, about 30 meters from the site. I'm right at the corner of King Street and Berkeley Street.
Okay, Marion, thank you for your question. So I'm going to lean on my colleagues at OTG, and the question Marion has was, what is the noise? Is it from when the auger is cleaned, when it extracts the muck from the ground? And how often will that noise occur throughout the day? Is it periodically or is it nonstop? I may lean on David or Chloe to answer that question from Ontario Transit Group.
So the
So
noises you
Ross, I'll take this question. Good evening, everybody. My name is Francisco Metcalf. I work at Ontario Transit Group, the design build contractor for this project, and I'm the environmental manager at OTG. I think I can answer part of the question specifically to the noise. So when you think about piling operations, there's going to be some noise. You can expect anything between 80 to 90 decibels. That's what the noise levels would be. The source of noise mainly is going to be that drilling machine. I wouldn't say that the noise is going to be specifically during the auger cleaning process. It's just the entire process of drilling produces noise. It is true that the auger cleaning device actually minimizes noise. When you think about 80 to 90 decibels, more or less, that can equate to the noise you can expect with a hair dryer next to your ear while you're blowing your hair. Okay. And as far as the second part of the question, which is, is it going to be continuous or not? I will have to lean on my construction counterparts to talk a little bit about the phasing of the work and how the equipment moves and what to expect. Maybe David, can you speak to that?
So during the drilling operations, it's going to create noise, and during the work hours, you're going to hear the noise happen throughout the day. It's hard to say how frequent, but it will be happening throughout the working hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And most of the noise is generated once the auger lifts out of the hole and it spins backwards to remove the loose soil. But with the auger cleaner, it will minimize the need for us to rotate that auger and remove the loose soil because the auger cleaner is intended to remove the soil out of the auger.
Thank you for those answers. So, Marion, it will be noisy at some periods, and then at other periods it won't be as noisy because the auger or the piling machine will be going to different locations across the site. So, if you're on King Street, it might be closer to your business at some points during the piling, but at other points it might be further away and it'll be less noticeable. Um, I hope that answers your question. I see a question in the chat. Let's go to the chat. So Mike Kushner asks, why is the noise barrier not installed on the Parliament Street? Our building, 393 King, is facing the construction, and we need a barrier too, Mike asks. Can somebody from Ontario Transit Group? Hi, David.
So we have noise barriers installed on King Street, Berkeley, and Front Street. The reason for that is because our station shaft, the perimeter of our station, is closer to these streets. So the noise barrier will minimize all the noise generated from the drilling machine. On Parliament Street, our station where we need to drill is further away from Parliament, so we don't anticipate the noise impacts to be as impactful as it would be on the other streets. So that's why we don't have any noise barrier on the Parliament side.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mike, I hope that answers your question. I'm going to head over to Slido where folks had an opportunity to ask their questions ahead of the event. And one of the questions here is, how many trucks can we expect in the neighborhood while piling is taking place? Chloe or David?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. The question is, how many trucks can we expect in the neighborhood while piling is taking place?
Oh, okay. So yeah, as mentioned during the presentation, I mean it's an approximation, but we can expect about 30 trucks entering and leaving the site every day. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Chloe. I'm going to go back to those who have their hands raised, and I see Marion has a hand. Marion, I'm allowing your microphone if you'd like to ask your question.
Actually, I think that was still up from before, but that's okay. I do have another question. So I guess just sort of going back a little bit on the noise, just because I am running a business there during the daytime. You mentioned that you're tracking the noise, you have monitors for it, and to expect these 80 to 90 decimals. What happened, like, is there a maximum that it goes to? What happens if it's too loud and we can't function? I mean, I know you have to build the subway, but at what point from your monitoring and everything, is there any sort of action taken if it's too loud? I don't know.
Yep.
Thanks.
I'll take this question, Marion. Thank you. It is a good question. So let me kind of explain the process of what we have set up and how we're going to handle this. We do have, as alluded earlier in the presentation, multiple noise and vibration and air quality monitoring stations throughout the work area. Now, these devices do have telemetry capability and are collecting data real time. I forget every how many seconds, but it's continuous monitoring. And because they're set up to trigger an alarm that it sends to the team automatically when we're getting near to exceed a threshold, we get that message immediately, and that triggers our internal process to start. Basically, that means OTG would reach out to the station operations, let them know, hey, monitor XYZ is telling us that we're reaching a threshold. What is going on? Is there something unusual happening? Do we need to stop? Do we need to rethink our means and methods to prevent it going through a threshold? So we are monitoring it live constantly at all times. And these are very sensitive devices. You can basically, sitting in your office at any time. You can hear conversations, what is being said. So it captures the noise levels, vibration levels, or air quality data very accurately, and it is immediately sent to us so that we can take action.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Marion, if you are still curious about piling, I'd encourage you to visit some of our other sites downtown where piling currently is active rather. Queen Spadina, for instance, and King Bathurst, that's my community, and of course Moss Park, and that'll give you a general sense of what to expect. I'm gonna focus on a couple more questions here in the chat as we do have several others. And Jim asks, is the Corktown station one of the first on the Ontario line where piling construction will begin soon? Well, Jim, I can actually answer that question. Piling actually began at Queen Spadina station, followed by King Bathurst and Moss Park. So piling is underway at several of our stations. The next question here is, have the monitors been placed yet? Have you been in touch with residents, building management, etc., to set these up? I may go back to Francisco.
Yes,
Hi.
Ross. So the answer to that question, the monitors, noise, vibration, and air quality monitors are already deployed around the work area. They are functioning and already providing data. And I believe that they're all within, they're not in private property. So there may have been some communications between OTG and Metrolinx, the comms group with the community, I'm sure already, but we do have them deployed. They are operational. They are producing data.
Okay. I hope that answers the question. There's a question here. What is the current estimate for when all of the construction at Corktown will be completed? And by all of the construction, we are speaking about the Ontario line construction. Anybody from OTG, please volunteer to answer that question.
So it will be around 2030. Basically, whenever also the 2030, 2031, when the project is completely done.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm going to go back to the Slido for a moment, as there's a question here asking, when will you let the community provide input on the name of this station? James Francis, our Metrolinx Ontario Line sponsor, can answer that.
Thanks, Ross. And I'd actually like to start just by adding a little bit to what Chloe said around construction timeline. So absolutely right, Chloe, with we're targeting a 2031 opening date for Ontario Line. And as folks may know, we have several interfacing contracts. So Ontario Transit Group, or OTG, they're responsible for station construction at this site, but we also have other contracts, say for installing the rails in the tunnels and having the trains operational. So all of that is working towards an integrated schedule of a 2031 opening date. So just thought I'd add a bit of additional color to that response. And in terms of station naming, it's a great question, and I'm really glad to hear the interest on this. So names that we're using for stations like Corktown, they're kind of planning phase names for stations, and they may not be the eventual station names that are emblazoned on the stations and on the system maps and in use during project operation in that 2031 and beyond period. So we are planning on undertaking a station naming process, which would be seeking your input, seeking public input on potential names. So do stay tuned. Anticipate rolling that out in the coming months. So thanks again for the interest and likely a topic for a future meeting. So thanks again.
All right, thank you so much for that response, James. And I'm going to continue here with Slido. I see another question here on Slido. It says, You mentioned the north site, but what's going on in the south site? They ask. And why is the south site not happening at the same time as the north site? Chloe or David?
Yep, so OTG is currently working only in the north side at the direction of Metrolinx. And then once we have the permission from Metrolinx to proceed with the work in the south side, then we will begin the works in that area.
I'm going to ask Jason or James to perhaps expand on that response.
Yes, thanks, Ross, and thanks, Chloe. And there's a very good reason that we're holding on moving into more intense construction work on the south side, and that's as folks on the call may know, there's quite an interesting history to both the north side and the south side here on both sides of Front Street, and we have completed all of the archaeological work that we needed to undertake on the north block. So that was a multi-year process. We uncovered many artifacts. The history on the site. There was the St. Lawrence Foundry. We had the historic lime kilns there as well. So some really interesting industrial artifacts, as well as artifacts from a hotel that was on that site. So dishes and bottles and artifacts of life in Toronto at that time. The South Block has even more of a history to it. So as people may be aware, the historic Lake Ontario shoreline is within that block. It also hosted the first and second Parliament buildings of Upper Canada, Home District Jail, and then Consumers Gas Industrial Facilities. So there's a tremendous amount of layered history. And we've been undertaking archaeological work on both sites for many years. And we are nearly complete on the south site now. So folks may have seen the last couple of winters, we've had tents up, and we've been working under heated conditions through the winter to work our way through all of the many layers of history on the site. And we have a bit more work to do related to that first Parliament era. So it's very exciting from a cultural heritage archaeological perspective. And as we've covered in some past public meetings, and we plan to come back, station naming will be back, but also for cultural heritage interpretation and commemoration. We're working on plans about how to best commemorate the history associated with the sites around the station in our actual station design. So in the areas around the station at street level, and in the concourse of the station, and also at platform level. So lots of work on that has been done. It's nearly completed. We have a bit more archaeological work to do. And as soon as we're done that on the south site, and we have completed all of that work in accordance with regulatory requirements, we'll be ready to hand that over to OTG to proceed with construction. So maybe I recognize I gave a fairly long-winded answer there. You can probably tell I'm quite interested in the heritage elements here and archaeological elements, but that's why we've been proceeding a bit sooner on the north site. We were through our archaeological work a bit ahead of when we've been complete on the south site.
Jason, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect response. Just to add to that by coincidence, the lion's share of the piling is in the north. So if we do get started on the north and then get started on the south shortly afterwards, then they could both be done basically at the same time. So it's a happy coincidence that it worked out that way.
All right. Thank you both for that good answer. I am going to go back to the chat, and I think I've got another one here for you, James. So the question is, do we know if there will be any new retail in and around the station, or will it just be a stop along the way? Also, is there any data on how this will affect surrounding property values? I'd like to add, we aren't real estate experts, and we can't give advice on property values, but we can certainly speak to the first aspect of your question.
Yes, and it's a good question. So the work that we're focused on at Metrolinx is delivery of the transit station, but very much recognize, and we're closely coordinating with Infrastructure Ontario and the City of Toronto, who have plans at this site as well. So I very much expect that there will be mixed use opportunities in the future, but not directly part of the transit station, but very much adjacent and nearby. That's the I suppose aspirations of our other public entities who are advancing plans in the area.
Yes, great. And I'll just add a little bit to that. So the station is being built in such a way to support future development. And I see Kathy's question here. Kathy asks, if the Ontario line work isn't complete until 2030, does that mean the tower construction won't begin until 2030? The high-rise residential proposal construction is independent of the work that Metrolinx is doing to deliver transit. That will be done through Infrastructure Ontario, and that construction would be done independently from our station construction. More information on transit-oriented communities and the project Infrastructure Ontario is undertaking can be found on their website. Or if you have any questions about it, please send them to the Ontario line at metrolinx.com. It's Ontario line at metrolinx.com. And I can make sure they get to the right people at Infrastructure Ontario to help answer your questions. I do want to acknowledge there is a lot of unknowns about those plans for transit-oriented communities, but we'll do our best to help get you the information that you desire. Right. Now I'm just combing through the chat to see if there's anything I haven't addressed. Yes, here's a question. As there was a previous foundry asked by Aaron on the northeast side, what are the soil contamination values and how is it handled for residents and workers' safety? I'd like to hand this one over to the environmental specialist on Ontario Transit Group's team. Chloe, is that you?
That would be me, Ross.
Francisco, of course.
Yeah. One of the things that we're doing, and this is true for any of the stations or the entire project alignment, is understanding the groundwater conditions as well as the subsurface soil conditions, so that the material or water that gets unwatered, the water gets handled properly. Specifically in Corktown, when we have to manage groundwater, it would be managed in a way that it is filtered and treated through a portable treatment system, and data will be collected after the treatment at the effluent side of these systems to ensure that there are no contaminants of concern being discharged off the project.
All right. Thank you, Francisco. And I hope that answers the question in the chat. Folks will have an opportunity to review this slideshow following the presentation. It will be uploaded to the Ontario Line website along with a recording of this meeting in case somebody missed this meeting or you wanted to go back and double check a slide. Everybody, we still have 12 minutes left. If you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or simply raise your hand. I'm just going to pause for a moment to give folks an opportunity. Okay, I see a question here. How much traffic congestion is expected during the truck routing, and should I expect any blockades due to the piling work? Chloe, I believe, or
Yes,
David?
I can speak to that. So, as mentioned earlier, we will have a flag person at every exit and entrance point on site. So this person will help pedestrian and cyclists to safely pass on the sidewalk and on the road. And then most of all, they will help the trucks to merge into the traffic, which is gonna prevent and reduce any congestion in the traffic. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I believe so. And I'm going to hop back into Slido and see if there are any other questions here. But first, I see David has a question. And the question here is, many historic building foundations have been exposed in the archaeology on the south side. Is there any expectation of preserving any of that, or is the goal simply just to document it? Jason or James?
So this is another great question. And I mentioned a bit earlier, we're looking at interpretation and commemoration opportunities for cultural heritage on the site, and in a way, we're quite lucky here because we do actually have physical, tangible artifacts of that express and carry some of that cultural history here, cultural heritage. And so we're looking at opportunities for potential use of some of the remains of the historic buildings here, whether that be as part of the future transit station or whether that be as part of, as I mentioned, Infrastructure Ontario has plans for the site, as does City of Toronto, and so we're working very closely with Infrastructure Ontario and the city and with our own plans to identify the best opportunities for bringing visibility and appreciation of that cultural heritage to both the transit using public and also for folks using future neighborhood amenities. So more information to come, but that's absolutely something that we're looking into.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think this is a good segue into the next question I see here from Slido. And the question here, oh, Jason has his hand raised. Jason, did you want to add something?
Yeah, actually, this is a really good opportunity to mention that there are some artifacts that are coming out of the South Block. The image that you can see up on the screen right now, pretty much dead center, just above that blue tarp there, is the First Parliament Foundation, and several of those bricks are actually being salvaged before the end of the month and being stored for potential later use elsewhere. So there is some stuff that is coming out of that site and being salvaged.
All right, thank you both. And this is a good segue into another question that we have here. And on Slido, it says, how noisy is sorry, not this one. Excuse me. There's several Slido questions I'm looking at. The question is, the black hoarding around the site is very dull and boring. Why aren't you putting public art from our community? So I'll address a couple aspects of that question. Yes, it is just large black hoarding, and it can be considered dull, and there's a purpose for that. Currently, the hoarding is in its first phase. It's just an initial phase, and it's not permanent. The reason why it's black is because it can withstand the elements, and it's easy to paint over graffiti for the time being. Now, like I'd mentioned, what you see is only temporary, and Metrolinx is currently developing a process to collaborate with the community and incorporate public art in different aspects of the hoarding. Now, there is still going to be project messaging like you see here at the corners of the intersection, but there will be allocated space, again, as I mentioned, to work with the community to insert some public hoarding, perhaps public art rather, perhaps it can reflect the community in which the station is being built. What you see here again on the corners is just Coroplast signage giving folks information about the Ontario line. And you can see that across several different construction sites like Moss Park or Queen Spadina, for example, in terms of hoarding. So that was, again, a long-winded answer, is that there will be an opportunity and we will come back to you with that. The next question I see here on Slido is there a dust mitigation plan for this work? And sight as dust blowing around from the site on dry days is problematic. Okay, so the question is, the dust is blowing around on dry days, and is there a mitigation and process here to reduce the amount of dirt and dust?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Ross. So as alluded earlier in the presentation, there are plans to do control dust emissions. We do have monitoring devices that will alert us if things are getting out of control or out of hand. But simply putting it, dust, the most efficient way to keep it down and prevent it from becoming airborne is on those days that are dry, long, several days with dry weather, just simply spraying water over the bare soils is going to have a very impactful effect in reducing dust emissions. And that is the plan, to use water to damp down the surfaces.
Thank you, Francisco. And yeah, we do want to keep the site as clean as possible, and we want to keep your neighborhood as clean as possible. Kathy here has a question. Kathy, I'm sorry I missed this earlier, but Kathy asks, I'm surprised that the westbound King and Parliament TTC stop has not moved east or west for the next few years. Was that considered? James, would you be able to speak to perhaps traffic plans and how we work with the TTC on this question here? The question is about the TTC stop at King and Parliament not having moved east or west for the next few years, whether it was considered.
Right. So this is so we certainly work closely with both the city and the TTC on our traffic planning, and sometimes that does involve shifting transit stops where that's you know where that's deemed to be appropriate. You know, in this case, looks like that's not the solution, but that's something we can certainly look into a bit more and provide more of an update at future meetings.
All right. Thank you so much for that, James. And I have 4 minutes left on my clock here, which gives us time for perhaps 1 or 2 more questions. If you have a question, please insert it in the chat or raise your hand. And in the meantime, I'm going to read one we just received from Slido. The question is, can you please ensure no noise of any kind before 7 a.m. during the setup time? No banging, no clanging, no roaring generators. Noise should not start before the work starts at 7 a.m. as per city rules. OTG?
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
leave it.
Go ahead.
So we've instructed all of our crews not to start any work before 7 a.m. Trucks are not permitted to arrive on site before 7 a.m. And we've also asked them and reminded them many times, no idling on local streets. So we don't expect any work to happen before 7 a.m. Francisco, do you want to add to that?
Yes, just to add to it, just a reminder, our monitoring stations are operational 24/7. So if something like that happens and it triggers an alarm, we will know immediately and we will take action accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you both. There's another question here, Marion. I believe we'd address this question. Perhaps it might have been missed, but the question here is, the whole line was expected to be finished in 2030. When is Corktown Station expected to be finished? James, can you provide Marion with a response to this question?
So so Marion, overall project, we're looking for an opening day, looking forward to an opening day of 2031. In terms of the specific construction schedule for Corktown Station, I would actually ask OTG colleagues on the line if they have an earlier date than that in mind, that may be being targeted. But the overall, we are looking to integrate the work of this contractor, Ontario Transit Group, with the work of our contractors working a bit east of here in Riverside and Leslieville. We have recently awarded and forthcoming contracts of work all the way up to Don Mills and Eglinton, and stitching all of that together, integrating that together for an opening day of 2031. So I expect that our civil construction here at Corktown will be ahead of 2031 in terms of how much farther ahead of 2031. That's you know, perhaps to be seen, but everything will be stitched together for that 2031 opening date.
All right. Thank you so much for that, James. And recognizing it is 7:59 p.m., I'll ask Amanda to take us to the final slide of the presentation. Well, as I work in communications and community engagement, and my colleagues on the line here do as well, we will keep you informed through community notices and more events like these in which you're participating in today, and construction liaison committees. Now, these construction liaison committees are very similar to the event that we're having here tonight, but it will give you more of an opportunity to have those conversations with the constructor. So if you are interested in being a part of these committees, please send an email to the email address you see on the screen here, ontarioline@metrolinx.com. Marion, as a business owner, I encourage you to send us an email and we'll set up a call with you to get more information about how we can help mitigate some of the disruptions around your business. Again, here we have an Ontario Line e-newsletter that goes out bi-weekly. It's a great way to stay in the know. And I strongly encourage everybody to sign up for that e-newsletter. If we didn't get to your question tonight, or if you have a question and you want it answered, please drop us a line. Our number here is 416-202-5100. It's monitored 24 hours a day. However, the best times to call are during daytime hours, of course, or just send us an email at ontarioline@metrolinx.com. You can always follow us on Facebook and Instagram or X. And yeah, we're really excited to be working with everybody. And thank you for taking the time out of your evening joining us tonight. So I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you. That concludes this meeting. Good night.